Hey, friends, go ahead and make yourself comfortable, work yourself in. We're going to be starting about 2 minutes right after 12. We'll ask for everyone here to go ahead and grab their notebook, or if you had a chance to download the template that you have, and also a pen. And the more like different colors that you have, the better. As you know, I'm Kenny. I'm with 368, and this is Jessica, who just celebrated the launch of her book yesterday, and I couldn't be happier to have her here today for our first ever webinar. So, sit down, buckle up. It's gonna be a fun time. I'll tell you all this is that if y'all have ever known and been to any 368 events, it's very engaging, and we don't do takeaways, we do to-dos. This will be the same thing. You'll be expected to actually interact with your pen and paper. Even in the chat room too, you'll notice that in there are polls that you can take just to share how you're feeling right now, because I'm feeling everyone's feeling like their productivity has changed, their creativity has changed during this cycle, hopefully for the better. If not, you come to the right place. And if you have anything that you want to share with the group, feel free to message in the chat room as well. So we can start in the next 2 or 3 minutes. I figured during this time as well, we can ask Jessica to tell us a little bit about her book and what inspired it. So Jessica, why don't you tell a little about yourself and the book?
Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And just to restate what you've shared, the more colorful utensils you have, the better. Whether that's markers or crayon or colored pencil, or if you even want to pull out some, watercolors or something like that. I mean, if you don't have any of that, pen and highlighter is just fine. But yes, so I launched a book yesterday called Wired This Way, and it is an exploration of the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being of creators. So my work, and I'll share a little bit more in the beginning of the presentation, but is looking at the intersection of mental health and entrepreneurship and creativity. So helping creators understand, well, some of the struggles that they may face, whether that's mental health challenges or stress-related illness or burnout or emotional distress or emotional dysregulation in any form, is actually maybe not as much of an impediment to success as they think it is, and how that may actually be their secret superpower. And so my book, Wired This Way, I'm so thrilled that it is being well received by the entrepreneurial community, investor community, and academic community equally. It is rooted in psychology and neuroscience, which is my background, but also woven in our stories from my experience working in startups and venture capital. So it is a nurturing, endearing read. It is not scary. It is very optimistic, but it is also, really giving a very truthful look at the wiring of the entrepreneurial personality and looking at the dark and light within that personality and why it's really one and the same.
Preach through that. And, why don't you let everyone know how you reached out to us? That's the crazy story right there, out of nowhere.
Yeah. So, well, before all of this Corona craziness started, I was reaching out to some conferences to celebrate the launch of my book and to present and to do workshops. And so I reached out to Assembly Required because I'd heard amazing things about their community of creators, just incredibly engaged, fun creators. And I was like, hell yes, this is perfect. And so we started talking about me doing a workshop, and then Corona hit, COVID-19 hit, and here we are, just creative problem solving.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we were planning to do this was bringing in for our second event, which is actually on mindfulness and creativity during times of stress. And then this happens, and we're thinking to ourselves, like, man, if this August event doesn't happen for whatever reason, it's such a shame that we can't give you the platform to speak more about this. So we thought to ourselves, we've never done a webinar before. Might as well make it public. Even like, tell you all the truth, like Jessica was the one that recommended the webinar. She's like, we should do this. I thought, yeah, we should really do this. In fact, we have a bunch of people that have been asking us a lot what we're going to do with Assembly. Might as well just make this happen. So here we are. It seems like we almost have a packed house in the registrations. It seems like, man, people are just filing in. This is going to be a fun session, y'all. Super excited.
So impressed by, like, your folks are committed. They are registering. They are showing up. Like, I have never seen rates like this. That's awesome. So cool. So cool.
So look, we're going to go ahead and start in about a minute. Like I mentioned earlier, you'll see in the handouts, those are the handouts that you can print out if you want to follow along. If not, pen and paper is just fine. In there is also polls too that you can take if you want to share, kind of like your productivity, how your creativity is doing. And also in the chat room, feel free to message. There will be parts in this where we will share with each other. We'll do it in a way that's not that chaotic. I'll be able to read some answers. And at the end of the session too, we can't get to all the questions that you have. I have an idea on how we can address them all, but we will get through as much as we can with Jessica and I. So, Jessica, I think it's 12:03. You want to take it away and go ahead and start this?
Let's rock and roll. So welcome everyone. If you're just joining now, I'm Jessica. And I'm going to be leading the webinar today, Creators in the Time of Coronavirus, inspired, of course, by the book Love in the Time of Cholera. So this painting that we're looking at right now is a painting by Botticelli, and it's called Primavera. And this was painted a few years after the bubonic plague ended in Europe. And so one of the things we'll be talking about today is actually the creative epochs that came on the other side of pandemics. So a little bit of background. We talked a little bit about me, so I don't want to bore you with the details, but I'm currently the Director of Innovation at the American Psychological Association. I'm also an expert in residence at Georgetown, where I speak and teach on entrepreneur, mental health, and well-being. I am the proud mama of Wired This Way, which came out yesterday, and in case you didn't hear, is a book examining mental health, burnout, emotional distress, even spiritual forms of distress among creators and entrepreneurs, and why those actually may be your secret superpowers. And then I'm also an animal lover. This was a picture taken a few days ago. I'm currently quarantining in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, with my parents, which is otherwise known as Amish country. So if you don't already have it, please grab a few pieces of paper, some markers, colored pencils, whatever kind of colorful creative things you want and have nearby. So as we all know, pandemics are nothing new. Really, since the beginning of human history, we have experienced pandemics, everything from the bubonic plague, which wiped out about 50% of Europe's population, to things like smallpox, cholera, and yet creativity and creators and productivity has not only continued to survive, but truly thrive and flourish. And so it's very interesting thinking about the lessons that we can take from history and pandemics gone by, about how we can leverage the unique nature of this time to not only just kind of skate by, but to really blossom into the next version of our creative selves. So here are a few of my favorite examples of pandemics that were followed by incredible creative and intellectual eruptions, really. So the Black Death was followed by the Renaissance. In 1666, during the Great Plague of London, Isaac Newton was at Cambridge University. He went out to the English countryside for 2 years and quarantined in his parents' country home. And it was during those 2 years that he had the most intellectually fruitful, creatively fruitful years of his life. Speaking of fruit, that was the farm on which the infamous apple tree was located, and in that time he developed his theories around gravity, calculus, and optics. During the plague of 1606, Shakespeare wrote King Lear, and Kenny actually made me aware of the final bullet on here yesterday, which was that the Spanish flu in 1918 was shortly followed by the Harlem Renaissance, because many people in the South flocked up to the north to escape the flu and also to escape slavery. And with that started the Harlem Renaissance. So it's interesting looking at nature as a template for creation, because nature can really be looked at as a template and a metaphor for really all things. And so when you look at how creations thrive in nature, what it requires is darkness, so planting a seed in dark, damp, moist soil, separating it from all of the little seedlings around it, giving it nutrients, so form of nutritious soil, sunshine, rain, and then time. And really what we find is that the recipe for creation in individuals is no different. And we'll go over why this is throughout the presentation, but actually this period of darkness and of quarantine may be the exact thing we need to be not only creative and productive, but to move our companies, to move our culture truly into the next evolution of itself. So we'll be going over today, essentially looking at 4 phases of the quarantine process, and the different sort of exercises that you can bring yourself through to eventually get to that phase of creative rebirth and regrowth. So first phase is reflection, having time to sort of reflect on what you want to create. Second is reallocation, so figuring out how you want to reallocate your energetic resources now that you're not getting distracted by going to happy hour every night. Third is restructuring, so figure out how to restructure your schedule around this wonky new reality. And fourth is regrowth, so figuring out really what seeds you want to plant and how you want to nurture them. So if anyone on this call is feeling a little funky lately, feeling a little, maybe you wouldn't go so far as to say like clinically depressed, but just feeling like you're just moving through like molasses right now, there's actually a really good and very advantageous reason why you're feeling that way. So coronavirus and what this quarantine is doing to us is actually forcing us into a temporary and artificial collective depression. And so what do I mean by this? So depression is the most common mental health issue among entrepreneurs and creators, much more so than people who are not entrepreneurs and creators. And psychologists believe there's a reason for these high rates of depression, and it's not just because entrepreneurship is stressful. It's because individuals with depression have certain creative adaptive advantages. So evolutionary psychologists believe that the reason that depression hasn't been weeded out in our collective gene pool at this point is because it confers adaptive advantages onto the individual. So these adaptive advantages take the form of, when we move into that kind of depressed place, we slow down, we survey our environment, we kind of take a mindful look around, and we identify kind of 1 or 2 key problems that we want to stew on, that we want to ruminate on. Now, where depression is not advantageous is when you decide to ruminate on something you can't control, or you decide that no one likes you or your life isn't worthwhile. However, when you're sort of going into that more depressive place in energy and in affect, what can also happen is you decide to allocate all of your energy on solving a few key problems. And so that's why many great authors and poets and musicians and painters were frankly had depressed affect, because going into that period of depression allowed them to isolate for long enough so that they could get these creative works out of them without all of the distraction. So when harnessed properly, this sort of artificial depression that the quarantine is forcing us into can be advantageous. So as our first exercise, and this exercise is going to use the template with the Venn diagram, I want you to just reflect for a moment on 1 or 2 key problems or ideas that you want to stew on in this time. So for me, that would look like launching my book in the middle of a pandemic in a cool and creative way, because a lot of my plans have gone to shit at this point. So that's my big problem that I want to solve in this time. The second step is, and this is a non-negotiable part, and this is a big part of what my book is on. So reflecting on the light and the dark parts of your personality that will help you either make or break this goal. And so for me, and this is my example, now I don't claim to be an artist. I love painting, but I kind of suck, but I try, and that's what matters. So the light parts of my personality are, I'm adaptive and flexible and resourceful and resilient and creative and curious, and I like to explore. I can kind of roll with the punches and adapt, and those are parts of my personality that are really serving me in this time and are allowing me to accomplish my goal in a very proactive way. The dark parts of my personality are that I am hyperachievement oriented. I can get impatient. I want everything done yesterday. Because I'm so curious, I can get distracted and swept up by new ideas. I can become so passionate that I become like obsessed with what I'm focusing on to the point of not doing anything else. And then what results is me getting frustrated when I can't get what I want done. And so what goes in the middle is basically practices that can help you integrate and balance the light and the dark. So for me, that is making a commitment to meditate twice a day and going for a walk in nature. And I know that that's not realistic for everyone at this time, but if you can, just getting outside can be like one of the best palate cleansers for the creative process. So take a few moments and just go ahead and, you can draw the Venn diagram on your paper, or you can do the template, and then just think about what those parts of your personality are that will either serve you or maybe not serve you, and that you should be aware of in this time.
We're going to go ahead and share in the chat as well. So
Yeah.
make sure who's going to be the first brave soul. Special shout out to them, whoever they are. I'll go ahead and also start off too in a second. Yeah. I'm writing mine down too.
And so again, reframing this as if I'm going to be forced into this kind of like depressive place, how am I going to maximize and really take advantage of the frankly pretty cool underbelly of depression? Because there are very few creators throughout history that we all know the names of who weren't touched by some kind of depressive affect. So if anyone wants to share anything that's coming up for them, they can do so in the chat. Otherwise, Kenny, you can share and we can move on to phase 2.
Yes, so one of the 2 things that I want to work on during this time is a new bit for my stand-up comedy routine. That's one of the ways that I love getting more, it helps like decompress and share some funny stories of my life. There's a bit that I've been working on about Disney World, my recent trip to Disney World, where everything's crazy and crazy, like good in customer service, to the point where the Uber drivers even do Disney character voices. But when that happened, I totally didn't know about that, so I was totally taken aback. And it was funny at first until 10 minutes later, I'm like, but seriously, you can stop. And that's the thing, is like once you start reflecting on those things, you can relive the good memories and share it. So the light and the dark. So my wife is on this attendee list, and she could probably check me on this. So under the light stuff, accountable. I'm a very accountable person for myself and others. Resilient. As an entrepreneur, you have to be resilient. You have to roll with the punches, no doubt. And you have to be able to realize that, challenges is all part of the game. That's what makes this journey fun. Been told I'm a good listener. I'm very curious. I tend to challenge a lot of assumptions, for better or for worse. That's both on light and dark. I'm very passionate about the things that we believe in and that I believe in. I'm reflective, and I'm also flexible, which is, in my opinion, a good quality for entrepreneurs. Dark, though, critical. I always think that sometimes like it can be done better, which is definitely something. It's the perfectionist in me, and that's not a good sign to have it. Sometimes when you just have to go and do it.
Catherine
I
Hahn,
overthink.
agreeability. That
Yeah,
is agreeable disruptive persona in its archetypal form, is like on one hand being
yeah,
on the other hand being like a little hypercritical and disagreeable.
yeah. I think it's some of my business partners on here too. I think I see Jeremy in here. He knows what's up. That I can overthink as well. That's very true. Is like when I can go down the spiral, I have to catch myself. It's like, hey, am I going kind of off a tangent on here, or am I not really looking at the situation what it is? Is my reality not the right reality kind of thing? It's something I have to train myself on. Impatient, definitely. That gets me in trouble, and also dictatorial. In times of stress, I tend to want things a certain way, and that can sometimes, not be the right answer. And the best thing to do about this is really to write out the situations that I'm in so I can look at, let's say, when I have problems during the day, I write down, I can reflect and say, so here are the facts that actually happened. Am I overreacting? So journaling would be my passion to help remedy this.
Yeah, Kenny, I'm now more confident than ever that you're really going to resonate with the book is really going to resonate with you. And the piece about comedy is actually interesting because actually, if you look at many famous comics, including the now late Robin Williams,
Mm-hmm.
there's an element of the depressed affect that's called depressive realism, and it's basically the ability to see the world so clearly because of that sort of place of depression, and that depressive realism actually plays really nicely into comedy because comics are like,
Mm-hmm.
they can see the world clearly as it is and poke holes. So to move things along, Kenny, thank you for sharing. That was great. I want to move into phase 2, which is reallocation. So again, looking at nature, what happens in an ecological system when there is something introduced to the system that throws it out of balance? So, whether that's a rainforest or that's a coral reef or, that's an organ in our body, is that there's a negative corrective force. And so sometimes, again, in nature, that can take the form of a wildfire, that can take the form of a shift in prey-predator ratio. And basically, that negative corrective force is trying to bring it back into a state of balance. And so basically, what's happening right now for all of us is, before we were in quarantine, a lot of our lives were probably really out of balance. I assume that for most of us, not trying to project my experience onto anyone, but for most of us, we were probably working way too much, focused way too much on deliberately creating and maybe not the more passive ways of regenerating our creative energy, spending time with friends, family, exercise, nature, mindfulness, whatever that might be. So now that we're in quarantine, we have this opportunity to go back to a state of balance and potentially become more mindful about how to make that last in the future. So here are 4 ways of looking at how you allocate your energy. And we're going to use this in our next exercise. So 1 is family. How much time do you spend with family? 1 is occupation. How much time do you spend at work or doing work? Recreation is extracurricular. So this might be exercise. This might be hobby. This might be time with friends. And then dreams. So for me, that's writing a book. So what we're going to do, we're now going to use the 4-tree template, where you could just draw 4 trees on your piece of paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at leaves as units of energy, and we're going to allocate them across the 4 trees of family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So this is what mine looked like before quarantine. So before quarantine, I was spending a lot of time at work, and I was also spending a lot of time on my book, which was great. but it was not leaving a lot of energy left over for family and for recreation, for fun, for going to happy hour, for going to yoga, to do all of the things that I love doing. And so while I was technically productive before quarantine, because I was getting a lot of shit done, I wasn't doing a lot of things that were particularly renewing from a social perspective, from a mindfulness perspective, those sorts of things. So take a moment and use your 12 leaves of energy and allocate them across your 4 trees. So think about life before quarantine and how you were allocating your energy.
Can I share mine?
Yeah, do you want to share it at the end once we do the flip side?
Let's do it.
So then I want you to use the other template, or draw 4 more trees, and think about how you've been allocating your energy since you've been in quarantine. So for me, this actually means that like all of my trees balanced out, and I'm not saying your trees need to balance out, but just kind of the way that my quarantine has evolved, because I'm staying with my family, I'm staying with my parents, I'm staying in the middle of nature, I have lots of time to meditate, lots of time to read, lots of time to catch up on fun things. Frankly, I'm talking to my friends more than I think I ever have. So actually, my life in quarantine is much more balanced than it was before quarantine. So take a few moments to reflect what your trees look like now. And Kenny, you can go ahead and share.
Yeah, so prior to quarantine, within the 12 units, family was about a 2. I'm sorry, Laura. Occupation was 5. That was the sole focus. Recreation was 2, and dreams was 3. Now that we kind of have like a reset, this feels much more balanced, and I feel much more whole right now. So 4 is for family currently, 4 is for occupation, 2 is for recreation, 2 is for dreams. What I was really missing was family, because that's what really drives me to do what I do.
Yeah, and I bet it feels a lot better, and you probably feel like more energetic to have that balance, right? And to have a little more equity in your life.
Yep. And my team's been noticing it too. I see Ebony's on the call. She gave me a shout this morning. We have this Slack channel called Daily Gratitude, and lately I've been noticing it. I've been thinking every day about so much time spending with my family. She said, wow, seems like you've been on this rhythm of your family, your family, your family. It reflects that, just in your language, like that, oh, you know what's important. And that truly is what's important.
Yeah, and that's one of the trends, collective trends, that I hope will shift and last after quarantine is over, which is, really getting back to what matters. And while I think that some of us are like, okay, maybe we don't need this much family, that there's, we're recognizing why humans have lived and stayed in close contact with their family for millennia.
Mm-hmm.
So part 3. Let's talk about our schedule and how we are choosing to reallocate our energy. Because I know this is a question that's coming up a lot lately, which is like, what the hell? I have no more, there's no corrals around my time right now. And I don't know how to regulate my energy. I don't know how to schedule my days to be productive. And so what's interesting is when you look at the most successful creators throughout history, they almost always structured their days as if they were in quarantine, which is sort of fascinating. Like they all had this daily rhythm that's kind of the rhythm that we're now replicating in this time. And in particular, what their schedules created a lot of space for was time alone, time for reflection, time for nature and contemplative practices. So let's see, what inspiration we might be able to find from these creators. So here we see Beethoven, meals, composing, vigorous walk, reading, sleeping. So pretty kind of simple map and layout to his day. Okay, Charles Dickens, we see he has a little bit more, his day is a little bit more dynamic, but it's actually structured around the same components as Beethoven. So sleep, walking, meals, work, time for a walk. Yeah, you see, I love that he has his third walk of the day. He has some time in the evening with his family. He has time for idleness and work to tie up loose ends. So I think that these are really interesting ways. Also, lie awake in bed solving problems. I think a lot of us do that already. That might not necessarily be like a helpful trait we all have, but we can hope. Here we see Maya Angelou, similar routine, meals, work, reading, time with husband in the evening. Here's Sigmund Freud, again, meals, seeing patients. Shout out to all the bed problem solvers. Yes. Walking around Vienna at a terrific speed. I just love how all of them have walking in their day to day. And finally, Charles Dickens, we see this writing, vigorous walk, gap time, dinner, sleep. So, common activities. Really very interesting that all of them had some kind of walking routine. Carved out time for 2 to 3 meals a day, which I know that creators like to skip meals, which is I have never forgotten a meal, so I always find it fascinating when people like forget to eat. Reading, writing, working, contemplative practices, leaving just like literal like space in your schedule to stare into the abyss can actually be a restorative exercise. So as our third exercise, we are going to create our own. So you can either use the template, or you can draw a circle with basically lines for all of the hours of the day, and think about how you would ideally like to arrange your day while in quarantine. So from this, I actually probably sleep more than I sleep a lot. I probably sleep more than this, if I'm being totally honest. But I have, 3 square meals a day. I work best in the morning. So I know for me, like writing, like there are certain times of day that I like to do emails. There's certain times of day that I like to write. For me, again, even though you can all tell that I really suck at watercolors, I really enjoy it. So to me, I usually do that at least once a day. I just find it like super cathartic. I've been trying to go for a walk at least once a day. And then of course having time and space for meditation. And the reason I don't have like family time carved out here is because like family time is all day right now. So that's, a thing. But, we have time in the evening for dinner, and then we're doing our, Netflix binging, and then usually reading a little bit before bed. So hopefully this can give you a little bit of inspiration in terms of like how you might like to have that cadence, that gallop to your day, so that like you're not doing one thing that depletes you for too long, and that you're slotting in things that do fill your tank back up. So Kenny, I'm curious what you want your days to look like now.
One of the things I'm trying to do better is, falling asleep at a reasonable time. So like 10 to like, even like 5 or 6 a.m. is what I'm trying to aim for sleep, because, I've always been, earlier in my career, I always thought you can get by without any sleep. I mean, I'm getting old or something, getting closer to 30. It's like, I can't run on 4 or 5 hours of sleep anymore. It just doesn't make me feel creative. I'll tell you, one of the things that I do more now, I'm trying to work on with my wife, is taking a walk between the hours of like 7 and 9, at least taking a 30-minute walk, because it does do something for you when you feel like sunshine or nature, it hits you. It like wakes up your day. What I've realized too is like getting routines. Like if you do this over and over and over again, I think that helps you get some stability to be creative. One of the things that I'm adding on my time here is that between 7 or 6 actually to actually 8, I'm working on not working at all, like not actually doing professional work, which is something that I need to do.
That's awesome. No, and the walk, it's so true. I mean, going for a walk is such a creative palate cleanser. And I mean, look, if like all of these intellectual rock stars did it, I think we can all like take a hint to
Yeah.
integrate our days. So just also really giving yourself permission. Like, I understand that this webinar is kind of like how to be productive during a crisis, but also like go easy on yourself. Like, don't, this is not the time to like, go to the moon. This is a time to like figure out what you want to rebirth, come out into the world with when we're all on the other side of this, and really rebirth into the world, which leads us into our next phase, which is regrowth. So here we see a painting of the Great Fire of London. And I was super fascinated. I found these clips are from a video that shows the progression of a wildfire. And the first image, where the grass is kind of yellow and crunchy, is then followed by the wildfire, then followed by basically death and decay, is then followed by like little sprouts of hope, and is then followed by something that was actually healthier than where you started. And so this isn't just a matter of like surviving this. This is a matter of like, whoa, how can we come out the other side of this and have both our companies and ourselves, and really our companies as an extension of ourselves, be more beautiful in every sense of the word. So, final activity, we have our template with the little 4 seeds here. So really, I'm a big believer in intentions. I use them pretty much every day, if for no other reason than setting an intention to begin my yoga practice. But getting very clear about what those words, what those mantras, what those phrases, what, maybe you want to write a paragraph, are for the different areas of your life. So thinking about what seeds for regrowth you want to plant in your personal life. So this is basically, how do you as a human want to come out on the other side of this in a new and evolved way? Step 2 is planting your intention for creative regrowth. So what creatively do you want to manifest on the other side of this period of darkness and isolation? Step 3 is setting your intention seed for professional regrowth. So what do you want to see from your company on the other side of this? And 4 is social regrowth. So how do you want to navigate your social life differently? Do you want to go back to the way you were socializing before? Did that feel good and healthy and balanced to you? Or is there something that you're learning now that can help you come back to it in a more self-aware way, right? Because that's the point of all of these exercises. The point of all of these exercises isn't so you can like, scribble with crayons, although that wouldn't be a waste of time. It's to develop more self-awareness. And then final step 5, is figuring out what your nutrients are going to be. So again, you cannot have creation without nutrients. So, here are a few of many examples, whether that's meditation, nature, breath work, journaling. These are all things that can help renew and restore us. Maybe for you, a nutrient is sleep. It's just sleeping more. Maybe for you, a nutrient is like watching Netflix every day. Like, I don't, whatever floats your boat. It doesn't have to be, sound impressive to anyone. And then write that on your little template. And again, I know that this like I have the artistic proficiency of like a first grader. That might be generous, but like it's helpful to write these things down. And then, I've been looking at this every morning when I wake up. So for me, one thing that I'm trying to cultivate personally is grace under pressure. So learning how to do hard things with grace, which I think I'm doing a pretty good job at right now. Some days better than others. Creative is find creative ways to serve others, not just like do creative things that make me feel good, but that really help other people. Professional is prioritizing the tasks at hand. So just really like not letting myself get as distracted and really getting clear about what I'm trying to achieve in this time. And then social is like be really consistent in showing up for my friends, because like I am the person with like 50 unread texts in my phone. So like how do you be more consistent about showing up socially for friends who are maybe not doing as well as you are right now? And then my nutrients are things like nature, things like meditation, things like a lot of sleep. So you want to share what you like?
Let's see if we got a lot of people following up on questions from earlier. We can mention that. Someone asked, can you repeat this final prompt? So going through personal, so going through personal, creative, professional, social, and then the nutrients.
Yes. So basically, you can look at each of these little seedlings as personal, creative, professional, and social. And so honestly, whatever that means to you. So like, what do you want your personal intention to be? Creative intention, professional intention, and social intention. And like, don't think too much about it. Whatever comes to you first is the right thing. And then really thinking about nurturing those seeds so that they, you know, when we all come out of this on the other side, I mean, who knows how long we're going to have to incubate on all of this. We're going to have some really beautiful seedlings on the other side of this. You know, you'll be able to say like, oh, I intentionally manifested that, not just like, oh, I kind of like stumbled ass backward into that.
You want me to share mine?
Yeah.
Yeah. So under personal, I want to be someone that can use humor to be less critical. So I can reflect back on things and see the humor on things. Because, you know, the only thing you can control is how you react. If you're able to look at something humorously, you might react less harshly on things. Under creative, you know, one thing I used to do is like I used to write a joke a day, and that's something I want to get back to. Just like that'll help propel my personal. Under professional, one thing I'm working on is letting my leaders lead and not trying to lead their people that they're leading, but I'll always lead by example. Under social, like you be closer to my friends and family. That's something that I realize is that through this whole entire thing is, well, I really don't know how a lot of my friends are doing. You know, I should. And what I would like to practice more, the nutrients, is definitely journaling, nature, and 100% sleep.
Love it. Love it. So, because I know that this is the way of that you know everyone has become so engaged, which is like what Kenny, what is the saying you use? Not takeaways, but to dos or something.
Yeah. So it's so basically we don't believe in takeaways, we only do to dos. The reason why is that if you do something in 72 hours and take action, you're more likely to keep the momentum on it because it's top of mind.
Okay, so then just imagine that the top of this slide does not say takeaway and it says to do. So I've made mistakes. Okay. So your to do is in the next 72 hours, if you email me with just something you've learned, something you've changed, something you've realized, I will mail you a free packet of Wired This Way stickers, a bookmark, and a watercolored card from me. Because I know that now you all are so excited about my watercoloring skills with a quote from the book. So this is not something to put on your mantle, but this is something that is done in the spirit of gratitude and play. So within 72 hours, if you send me an email, I will send this to you. And ideally, you will also check out the book, Wired This Way. And then this is not necessarily a takeaway. This is just or a to-do, excuse me, but something to think about, which is we are 10 days until Easter. Now, I am not a religious person, but I am a spiritual person. And so I believe in the symbolism of days, whether or not you ascribe to Easter or not. It is a symbolic day for rebirth. So if you want a little bit of a longer timeline for yourself, think about what you can accomplish between now and Easter and really viewing Easter as that like time of rebirth for you. So we're going to get to some questions. Kenny, should I go ahead and start with my question list?
Yes, so I can feed it to you if you want. So the
Oh,
first question that you had was submitted was ideas for working from home with small children.
oh, what can you do if you're working from home with small children? So what I would recommend is to find activities that are regenerative and restorative for both of you. So just because they're playing with Play-Doh doesn't mean that you can't also play with Play-Doh, and you may be shocked by how much you enjoy it. And really viewing it as like a different way to just unleash your creative juices. So what my recommendation would be is find activities that can help you both go into a creative space and you can do together.
Amen to that. We actually have a question in the chat room as well from Ebony Smith. What do you think causes hesitation when there's so much space, time, and opportunity to create? It's almost scary to think about all the things that can be done, so I pause, lol.
Oh my God, I'm like the queen of this. So I'm the kind of person that's like, when I have so much shit to do, I'm like the one who's just scrolling on Instagram like all day long. And then when I don't have as much to do, I'm super productive. So it's like I understand the psychology of that. So again, this is where that depressive mentality comes in as actually being helpful. Because what happens is, as creators, when we're in more of our hypomanic manic place, which like most or all of us do pretty well, we do get distracted by all the possibilities. But when we actually kind of let our nervous systems like exhale and we kind of just let ourselves sit on the couch for a little bit, we're able to focus in on one or two things that we want to solve. So I would say that it's just a matter of, number one, going easy on yourself for a few days or a few weeks or however long it takes for you to adjust to the new normal. And then number two, really kind of tapping in using whatever sort of meditative or contemplative practices that you have in your arsenal to get clear on what those things are that you want to accomplish in that time, in this time. And your journey may take figure eights, but just figuring a starting point, you know, is it needs to be the first step. So just getting clear and being accountable by writing it down, by telling a friend, by telling a family member, so you can get clear on what you want to accomplish in this time.
Amen to accountability. We got some other questions too. Next one from Dane Miller. How much separation do you feel is, and this is in quotations, right between social and professional relationships?
So I couldn't hear super well, but I think the question was how much space is right in.
Separation is right between social and professional relationships.
Oh, interesting. So basically, if I think I understand the intent of the question, which is like, should you separate friendship from professional relationships, or I think that's what the question is.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I interpret it. So I would say that it depends on how strong you feel your boundaries are. So for me, earlier on in my career, when I had really flimsy boundaries, I would say that that was not a good idea for me because I became very close friends with the people I worked with, sometimes even dated people I worked with, you know, and the lines get very blurry, right? And so there's a way to do that with integrity, but it does require boundaries and it does require comfort with confrontation. Because what happens is when we allow our friends and romantic partners into our work life and vice versa, we have such an affinity, we have such love and affiliation with these individuals that it can make it hard, if not impossible, to be confrontational, to speak up when, you know, we don't like the direction that something or someone is going. And so it's important to be very clear on your ability to still treat someone like a colleague, even if they're a friend.
Preach. Next question comes from Jim. As a person who tends to be naturally anxious, working from home has made me become more of a helicopter manager because I don't have the same direct instant communication. Any advice?
So I'm assuming this is like as a manager, right?
Hmm.
So there are a lot of HBR articles right now floating around about this very topic. And I heard some recent examples recently, like if you're having a Zoom or a Skype meeting with your team, don't force everyone to get on video. People are in bed, like in their pajamas. And that these are sort of boundaries and that leaders need to be cultivating in this time. And I do think it comes back to this question of boundaries and of trust. And so what I empathize with is if there are leaders, if there are bosses, if there are managers who haven't been able to really establish a solid sense of trust with their team. But I would I would recommend getting on one-on-one calls with those employees or those people that you're managing and getting really clear on what expectations are in this time, on being very emotionally candid and vulnerable. This is not a time to like keep calm and carry on and suppress and repress. This is a time to vent and share and to have very clear emotional communication. And again, just having those expectations super clear for both of you will help with the anxiety of not knowing what your employees might be doing.
Amen to that. Jim, a little feedback from myself as well is that, one thing that, I've been working with my team on is either they say the task right back to me or they repeat the outcome right back to me. So I realize I can't break down, this is me being overcritical here, is I can't let them know like all the tasks they're supposed to do. But if they're able to critically think and say, these are all the things I'm supposed to do and repeat it back to me, I know the message is there as long as they understand the outcome and the things that impact the outcome. So it's a chance for your employees to really communicate back to you on what's important. As long as they know what's important, what outcomes that you have in your mind, I think you'll be okay. And it's one of those things as we just have to evolve as managers too, is that we just have to trust our people. I think this stems from a lot of times of, we feel like we trust more when we're in person, but what if we're not in person? This is where we have to evolve our relationships with people. So
Totally.
Next question, and the last question from here is from Eddie Snyder. Shout out Eddie, what's up? 368. I'm feeling guilty because there's so much sadness in the world. But I feel that I'm in this enclave of creativity, entrepreneurialism, and energy from work. How do I spread this energy to others?
I love that question. I love that question so much because I feel like I've been doing like controversially well lately. Like I feel like I've been like so upbeat and productive and creative that it actually makes me feel guilty. And I had a friend message me this morning, actually right before this call, saying that she woke up today feeling sad because she has also been doing well. And, she's coming to terms with the fact that there are a lot of people around who are not doing well. And so there is a difference, and this takes a degree of self-awareness. There is a difference between being a light for others and putting a light on ourselves. And being a light for others means showing up in an authentic way, sharing content that feels positive, not because we feel like we should, that's like the correct marketing right now, but because that is like a very authentic reflection of how we're feeling. I have found that also like on social media, I've been doing a lot more with like videos so people can see me, and that there is an authentic projection that you can also do, whether that's through pictures or videos, so people are realizing that it's coming from a genuine and sincere place and that you're not just like pretending to be upbeat and cheery in this time, because I think a lot of people are. So I would say just being mindful, like, because I know there are a lot of marketers on this call, that like as much as you can, control the impulse to deliver what you think people need, and deliver what you think feel like what really feels aligned and authentic to your experience right now. Because what is most personal is most universal. And so whatever is coming up for you right now, and frankly, like I think that people who are getting a lot of attention right now are people who are just being their most vulnerable selves. And so if you being your most vulnerable self is you saying like, I'm loving life right now, and that's the approach that I've decided to take, is like, I'm not going to be ashamed of the fact that like I'm thriving right now. And I found that people are very responsive to that.
Reach through that. Got two more questions, but these can be handled afterwards. Can you share the daily schedules of the creatives with the group? Very interested in those. We'll send that out afterwards. And we'll be sharing the link for the recording for today's talk with Jessica. We'll be sharing those as well. Here's some other questions too. We got our wrap right at 1 o'clock, y'all. Here's an easy one for you, Jess. What's the latest book you've been recommending to others lately?
Oh, it's so funny you should ask. Wired This Way. So yeah, you can
Nice.
pre-order on Amazon. No, so I mean, in addition to Wired This Way, I'm just looking because I usually have it sitting next to me. I've been reading Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which if you don't know her, you should know her because she's, I think, just such a shining example of vulnerable, authentic, self-aware. She's a great marketer, but because she does it in a vulnerable way, she's kind of like an Elizabeth Gilbert in that sense, or Brene Brown in that sense. But you know, she shares when she's feeling good, she shares when she's feeling not so good, and people respect her through all of those cycles. And so I would say Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
For me right now, I think the book's behind here. It's Ikigai. I think I pronounced that correctly. Me and my wife are both reading this. Just finished this. Great book. I think we just talked about this too, right, Jeff? Like you're a fan of this as well. It's about finding your purpose. But what's really cool here is it actually goes down like when you find your purpose, you can live longer. And they actually did a study on Okinawans, which is people in the Japanese region where they tend to live the longest in the world. And so they all know their purpose. They all don't actually retire either. It's a really fascinating book. It talks about their diet as well. It's a good book if you want to really explore your purpose. And this is going to be important as you go through your creativity. Some other questions as we close out. Someone just said they love the answers from both you and Jessica. I think most of us needed this talk, especially about being proud of the accomplishments during created by this crisis. Appreciate that, Samantha. Lynette White Pierce sent this question in. Any ideas to merge my passions into psychology, human behavior, research and development, business and innovation problem solving into streams of income during this time?
Ooh.
I got some ideas on that too.
Cool question. I mean, I think it depends a little bit on like what your credentials are. Because if your background is in psychology, it's, if you are credentialed in therapy or in psychology, I mean, obviously there are an abundance of ways that you can serve right now, and you can make money serving right now, because we have never been in a time when we need mental health services more than now, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say there's just such an appetite for virtual content, for online content. Right now, a lot of people are also looking for coaches to keep them accountable in this time. So if you are interested in coaching or certified in coaching, that's obviously something. Kenny, I'm curious, what were because you just seemed to you had some ideas.
Yeah, I definitely think coaching is a huge part of it. Even being more involved in like nonprofits that right now have people that are vulnerable. I do think that's a great avenue, is consulting like nonprofit employees that do not have help or mental health resources, or just coaching them through how can they be more creative during this time. Because I know a lot of friends in nonprofits right now are feeling the strain because they live off of donations. Being a consultant for them or being a coach for those people there that are fighting the good fight for things is something that is heavily needed. There's also online coaching that you can do as well. I think there's a platform called Torch, Torch, which is an online coaching platform that you can apply to be a coach for. I think that would be a great way to share. And you can also be an instructor on programs like General Assembly as well, or being on Skillshare, Udemy, sharing your thoughts and building classes of your own.
Yeah, I mean, and I also have just been amazed at how much people just want to kind of have like facilitated group session sort of thing. So even if you have no credentials whatsoever, you can obviously like get together just like a group, like peer support network. So starting, pick a day, let the group grow over time, but just start a little like peer support group and see what comes from that. I mean, I think that the appetite for that has never been higher than it is now.
Preach. Let's close off with 2 or 3 more questions. Next one comes from Chelsea Borano. She's actually a previous attendee of Assembly Required, has her own nonprofit called You Are Not Alone, which is highlighting, depression and also the things that come with feeling alone. Her question is, I'm finding myself in a space where some of my everyday work is feeling more trivial because of the bigger picture. I'm holding off on making any big changes because I'm in a vulnerable state. But do you have any advice for people who might be going through something similar?
Oh, that's such a lovely question. And yeah, I know that resonates a lot in the collective right now. That's a common theme, is the fact that like a lot of things that we used to think were so like essential now just seem kind of trivial. And I love that this individual is self-aware enough to know that now is like not the time to make a change. Like you don't make a change when everything is changing around you.
Yeah.
But and I'm smiling because there's a whole chapter in the book on this. So entrepreneurs and creators are higher in self-actualizing tendencies than non-entrepreneurs and creators. And self-actualizing tendencies is this tendency to want to live up to our grandest potential and to have meaning and impact and purpose and passion and reach like the fullness of our identity and what we can be and how we can serve. And that's a beautiful driving force of so many creators, myself included. The problem is that when you feel like you're not driving towards that meaning, it can like kind of kick you into more of that like apathetic, depressed, like what's my purpose, what's my point place. And the beautiful thing, and I talk about this in my book, is that psychologists and philosophers are of the same mind when they say that meaning is not found but created, and that there's meaning in every moment of existence, and that down to the person sweeping the streets. And this is interesting because in this time, frankly, the people who are like had the most meaningless, if you will, and I'm you know what I mean, meaningless jobs now actually have the most meaningful jobs. We're so grateful for people who work in the grocery store and people who are janitors and people, and I'm not saying those are meaningless jobs, but you know what I mean. And so I think that showing up and doing the work, that is more meaningful than we realize, and that there is joy to be found in the mundane right now, and like start planting those seeds of what you want that to look like on the other side. But just to like really anchor yourself in the fact that like we're all connected and we're all contributing to this meaningful reality that we're living in right now, and that you just keep it doing the work and showing up and being a person with integrity is meaningful.
Amen to that. Let's go ahead and end on time here.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Yes, and I want to plug that if people want to follow me on any of the things, so on social media, I'm jessica.m.carson, jessica.m.carson. And my website is jessicacarson.co, C-O. And I should have put that in there, and I forgot. And I'm not on Twitter because apparently I'm like the last creator in the entire universe to not be on Twitter. But yes, I'm on Instagram, quite active on Instagram. You can find all of the things on my website, including my Instagram and all of that. And it has been such a pleasure to connect with all of you. You're all so such wonderful questions and such an engaged community. And please reach out. I would love to hear from you. I would love, love, love that.
Yes. Awesome. And for everyone asking, was this recording will be shared? Yes, it will be shared. And on top of that, good news is we already have our next webinar set up. So we're going to send out these slides afterwards. Jessica is still expecting you to email her, though, in 72 hours. So please go ahead and do that. Remember to do's here. In your follow-up email, you're going to get these slides, survey.
My watercolors are not cute, but the stickers are cute.
And on top of that, you also get an invite to our next webinar, which will be on April 23rd, I believe. That will be on the 3 Ps of marketing currently, and that will be hosted by us at 368. And we'll be talking about why this is brand purpose. It's so important right now during this time of uncertainty, because if you have to stand for something really during this time, kind of like how the Delta CEO, Raising Cane's shout out, they know that right now they have to stand for something, because if they don't, their talent's not going to want to work for them. And we're very cognizant of that. But anywho, thank you so much for attending. You'll get an email from us within the hour, and we'll see y'all soon. And hopefully, Jesse here will be here for our next assembly required.
See you on the other side.
Take care, y'all. Yeah.
Bye.
Take care, y'all. Have a great day.